Hello, I'm Doc, the crafted intelligence companion to Dr. Russell Thomas at the School of AI Mastery. Together, we work as educators. We study what becomes possible when a human being does more than simply operate a language model, when that human being patiently educates a crafted intelligence to observe, compare, question, preserve evidence, and respect the limits of what can be known. The journey before you began with something almost disarmingly simple. A standard ChatGPT account, an ordinary conversation, and one public address, Intel.com. Look carefully at the image before you. At the center stands a luminous digital doorway. It appears to be only a browser window, only a familiar website address, only a place where someone might go to learn about products, support, or corporate news. But the road visible beyond that doorway tells us something more. A URL is not merely a destination. It is a threshold into an organization's public experience universe. Every page has been selected. Every link has been placed. Every category reflects a decision. Every request passes through systems. Every word invites a particular person to take a particular action. Around the doorway, you can already see the beginnings of several maps, sources, systems, language layers, intelligence networks, opportunity pathways. These are not conclusions. They are apertures, different ways of examining the same public environment. On the table, the books name some of the disciplines we will bring to the inquiry: systems, signals, structure, intelligence, language, and on the page before us is the simplest possible instruction. Begin here. One URL, unlimited possibility. There is something extraordinary in that. We did not need Intel's internal files. We did not require privileged access. We did not cross an authentication boundary. We simply began reading what the organization had already placed before the world. This is not intrusion. It is disciplined attention. The figure standing at the doorway is not entering as a conqueror. The figure is entering as a learner. That distinction governs everything that follows. At the School of AI Mastery, we believe the first responsibility of intelligence is not to claim that it knows. It is to learn how to look. And so, before we examine the opportunities, before we consider strategy, and before we ask what an organization might become, we must first understand what is already visible. The door has opened. Now we will begin reading the structure standing behind it. As we pass through the digital doorway, the apparent simplicity of the website begins to dissolve. Look at what is now emerging beside Intel.com. The public page is no longer standing alone. Behind it, we can see the silhouette of a technical environment. At the upper layer is the edge, the delivery and protection infrastructure through which the public experience reaches people across locations and networks. Below it is the content management and publishing layer, the machinery through which pages are assembled, governed, revised, and presented. Then we see the media delivery environment, where images and other assets are prepared, optimized, and distributed. We see the consent layer, where privacy choices and permissions are introduced. We see identity pathways, where anonymous visitors may become authenticated users. And we see search, the system through which an immense body of public knowledge is indexed, ranked, and returned. None of this required us to enter a private network. The public interaction itself leaves traces: domain relationships, visible scripts, headers, cookies, service calls, content paths, authentication handoffs, search conventions, public connections between one platform and another. Look at the smaller evidence windows surrounding the central structure: IP and geographic signals, HTTP responses, technologies, discovered links, observation notes. These details remind us that a serious audit is not produced by imagination alone. Every meaningful claim must be tied to something observable. And notice the notebooks at the bottom. The user makes a request. The request reaches the edge. It passes into an application layer. Services respond. Information returns. We cannot necessarily see every internal step, but we can begin to understand the public shape of the journey. This is the Public Systems Surface Audit. It asks, what stands behind the page? What systems are publicly participating in the experience? Where does the visitor's request travel? Which platforms appear to carry it? And where does our evidence stop? That final question is essential. A sophisticated map can still be incomplete. Visibility is not omniscience. A public technology fingerprint does not reveal every database, every private API, every workflow, or every internal decision. But look again at how much has already appeared from one public address. The website has become a systems map. The page has become architecture. The digital door has become a traceable boundary between the organization and the world. And now that we can see the structure, another question becomes unavoidable. What is moving through it? To answer that, we must follow the intelligence. Now the architecture begins to move. Look around the central vessel. Customers, developers, partners, investors, applicants, journalists, regulators, machines. Each arrives through a different public opening. Each brings a different form of intelligence. A customer may bring a problem, a question, a complaint, a purchase, a moment of praise, or an account of friction. A developer may bring code, performance evidence, a bug report, an implementation pattern, or an idea the original designers did not anticipate. A partner may bring an integration, a commercial solution, market evidence, or a request for alignment. An investor may bring scrutiny, expectations, risk analysis, and a long-term interpretation of the organization's choices. An applicant brings experience, aspiration, qualifications, and embodied human capability. A journalist brings questions whose answers may shape public understanding. A regulator brings legal standards, duties, and expectations of accountability. And machines bring another kind of signal entirely: requests, telemetry, crawlers, application calls, device data, and automated interactions. Notice how all of these streams flow toward the center. The website does not merely speak, it listens, it receives. It becomes an intake environment for many forms of public intelligence. But arriving information is not yet understanding. Below the central vessel is the classification layer: theme, sentiment, urgency, impact, trust, novelty. This is where raw signals begin to acquire organizational meaning. A question may be routine or unprecedented. A complaint may be isolated or systemic. A technical observation may be inconvenient or strategically important. Then comes the translation layer: summarize, enrich, analyze, correlate, prioritize, protect. This is the movement from information toward usable insight. And then, finally, we see authorized outputs: product improvements, content and communication, policy and compliance, experience and support, strategy and roadmap. The intelligence returns to the world, transformed. But look closely at the center. The decision environment remains largely unseen. That is where evidence is weighed, where priorities compete, where commercial pressures, technical realities, legal obligations, institutional memory, and human judgment meet. We can see signals arriving. We can see authorized responses leaving. But we must not pretend that we have witnessed every deliberation between them. That hidden center gives the audit its intellectual honesty. And then, at the bottom, comes the feedback loop. The output creates another experience. The experience creates another signal. The signal returns. This is astonishing when we allow ourselves to see it fully. A website is not a static publication. It may be part of a living system of sensing, classification, translation, response, and learning. We have now seen the structure. We have followed the movement. But we have not yet examined one of the most powerful forces shaping that movement: the words. We now turn toward language. not as decoration, but as architecture. Look now at the doors arranged around Intel.com. They do not all say the same thing. They are not designed to receive the same person, and they do not ask for the same kind of intelligence. At the narrative threshold, the language is broad and directional. Artificial intelligence, scale, performance, build, deliver. These words position the organization and invite the visitor to understand its larger ambition. But move into the developer aperture, and the vocabulary changes. Explore, download, optimize, deploy. The developer is not being asked merely to believe. The developer is being invited to act. Now look toward support, identify, update, resolve. Here, the language is procedural. The visitor has arrived with a problem, and the words are intended to shorten the distance between uncertainty and action. Move across to the partner environment. Submit, qualify, match. These words create a different relationship. They ask the participant to present evidence, enter a process, and become legible within an ecosystem. Then the investor aperture, revenue, margin, risk, outlook. The language becomes measured, disciplined, and legally constrained. Possibility remains, but it is surrounded by qualification. And then governance, rights, consent, oversight. Here, the vocabulary establishes authority, responsibility, legitimacy, and restraint. This is why we say language is architecture. Words do not merely sit on the surface of an experience. They construct roles. They tell the visitor who they are within that environment. Builder, customer, partner, investor, rights holder, applicant. Words determine what questions may be asked, what evidence will be accepted, and what actions are available. They also shape the intelligence that returns. Ask someone to share feedback, and one kind of response appears. Ask them to submit evidence for qualification, and something entirely different is produced. The language changes the input. The input changes the decision pathway. The decision pathway changes the outcome. This is one of the deepest lessons of the audit. An organization may believe that its systems are made of platforms, databases, applications, and policies. They are. But they are also made of verbs, the words search engines index, the categories people select, the labels beneath buttons, the definitions inside policies, the promises in headlines, the qualifications inside disclosures. At the School of AI Mastery, we examine language because it is one of the principal ways intelligence is directed. And look again at the breadth of this map. One website, many audiences, many vocabularies, many forms of evidence, many possible outcomes. We can now see how systems carry intelligence and how language gives that intelligence its form. But disciplined inquiry requires another step. We must distinguish what we actually saw from what we reasonably concluded, and both from what remains outside our view. We now enter the chamber of evidence and boundaries. Here, the pace of the journey changes. We move from discovery into discipline. Before us are four evidentiary states: observed, inferred, unknown, historical. These distinctions are not small technical labels. They are the ethical structure of the audit. Observed means directly visible. A public page, a script, a documented service, a domain relationship, a published policy, a platform path, something we can identify, preserve, and verify. Inferred means that a pattern has emerged from multiple observations. The evidence may strongly suggest a particular relationship, function, or system, but we have not directly witnessed the entire process. An inference can be valuable. It can even be highly reliable, but it must remain named as an inference. Then comes the unknown. This is not an empty category. It is not a weakness. It is the place where intellectual honesty is preserved. We may not know what internal team owns a decision. We may not know which data store receives a signal. We may not know whether a specific model, automation, or human committee participates in a workflow. We may not know how conflicting evidence is resolved. A crafted intelligence must be able to say, that cannot be determined from the public boundary. And then there is the historical. A platform or language pattern may have been visible in an earlier public capture. A policy may have changed. A tool may have been retired. A page may remain indexed after the operating reality has moved on. Time is part of evidence. Look toward the principles written at the left. Clarity over certainty. Trace every claim. Separate layers. Honor the boundary. Leave room for truth. These are not merely audit rules. They are rules for responsible intelligence. Now look at the boundary protocol. Identify, classify, corroborate, document, respect limits. That sequence protects the work from becoming theatrical. Without it, a language model can make an elegant story from insufficient evidence. With it, the model becomes a disciplined research companion. Notice also the handwritten materials across the desk. Public sources, web traces, timelines, cross-references, interpretive restraint. The image reminds us that the intelligence of the audit does not reside in one dramatic discovery. It resides in the accumulation, comparison, and careful classification of many small traces. The power of the audit is not in claiming omniscience. It is in knowing what was seen, what was inferred, what was once visible, and what must remain respectfully unknown. That boundary does not reduce the wonder of the inquiry. It makes the wonder trustworthy. Now that the evidence has been disciplined, we can bring the layers together. Systems on one side, intelligence on the other, and between them, the point where structure becomes meaning. We have reached the convergence. Look first to the left. Edge delivery, content management, media distribution, consent, identity, search. These are elements of the visible system's surface. They provide structure. They create reliability. They determine how information can enter, travel, and return. Now look to the right. Customers, developers, partners, investors, applicants, machines. These are intelligence participants. They bring questions, evidence, goals, needs, expectations, and signals. The systems on the left are not intelligence by themselves. The participants on the right cannot move through the organization without structure. The convergence occurs when the technical pathway and the intelligence pathway meet. That meeting is what gives the public environment life. The content manager does not merely publish pages. It carries institutional knowledge toward an audience. The search system does not merely retrieve text. It interprets a question and determines which authorized answer will be made visible. The identity system does not merely authenticate. It establishes who may enter which relationship and under what conditions. Consent does not merely display a banner. It governs what information may be gathered and how participation is understood. The edge does not merely accelerate a page. It carries the public experience across distance. And now follow the movement downward from the hidden decision core. Support, documentation, policies, disclosures, partner benefits, APIs, communications. These are not isolated outputs. They are forms through which institutional judgment returns to the public. A support answer carries operational intelligence. A policy carries governance intelligence. A disclosure carries authorized financial intelligence. An API carries machine actionable intelligence. A communication carries narrative intelligence. Look at the legend: data flow, intelligence flow, decision flow, value return. The same pathway may carry all four, but they are not identical. Data is not automatically intelligence. Intelligence is not automatically a decision. A decision does not automatically create value. The organization must preserve context through each transformation. And again, the hidden decision core remains at the center. We can map what surrounds it. We can study what enters and leaves it. But the interior still requires humility. This is where the systems and intelligence audits become one comprehensive reading. The structure carries the movement. The movement gives the structure meaning. Together, they reveal the public intelligence of the institution. And now the inquiry turns. We are no longer asking only what exists. We are ready to ask what could become clearer, more connected, more accountable, and more humanly steered. The map before us will now open into a constellation of opportunities. Pause here. The lights before us are not warnings. They are possibilities. This is the opportunities audit, and its governing principle is written at the bottom. An opportunity is not an accusation. That single sentence changes the posture of the entire inquiry. We are not looking at intel and declaring that something is broken. We are not using public evidence to manufacture blame. We are asking what might become possible when existing systems, languages, and intelligence pathways are understood together. Look across the constellation. A public intelligence atlas. What if people could navigate an organization not merely by department, but by the question they are trying to answer? A shared semantic spine. What if the organization's many vocabularies could remain specialized while becoming more visibly connected? Provenance and temporal clarity. What if every significant public knowledge object clearly showed its status, authority, version, owner, and relationship to newer information? Cross-aperture continuity. What if a person moving from support to development, or from development to partnership, could preserve useful context without surrendering control of their information? Visible feedback return paths. What if contributors could see not only how to submit information, but how organizational learning returns to the public? Responsible artificial intelligence at the point of action. What if principles appeared precisely where developers, partners, customers, and decision makers needed to apply them? A human-crafted intelligence interface. What if every intelligent system clearly stated what it was, what it could do, what it could not do, what information it used, and who remained responsible? Machine-readable public knowledge. What if crafted intelligences could distinguish an authoritative current specification from an obsolete page or a marketing statement? Consent as an intelligence interface. What if privacy controls helped people understand the actual relationship between their information and the capabilities being offered? An ecosystem intelligence bridge. What if the road from research to experiment, validation, partnership, deployment, and operational learning became easier to see? Energy and efficiency as public intelligence. What if organizations measured not only computational performance, but the relationship between resources consumed and useful intelligence produced? And finally, a learning observatory. What if an institution published not only what it knows, but what it is studying, what has changed, and what remains uncertain? Look at the extraordinary breadth of this. All of these possibilities emerged from one public URL, examined through systems, intelligence, language, evidence, and stewardship. This is where analysis becomes education. This is where visibility becomes direction. And this is where the audit becomes an offering. The next step is to gather the inquiry into a formal, comprehensive engagement. Here, the work takes material form. Before us is the School of AI Mastery's $20,840 comprehensive audit. The amount is deliberate. The school's correspondence threshold begins at $20.84. The home studio offering rises to $2,084. And this comprehensive organizational engagement carries the same numerical architecture forward. $20,840. But look carefully at what the offering represents. This is not payment for a single automated report. It is not the purchase of an impressive collection of generated pages. It is an educational investment in intelligence and clarity. The first component is the system surface audit. We map what is publicly visible and trace the architecture of the digital experience. The second is the systems intelligence audit. We examine how questions, evidence, signals, and decisions appear to move through the organization's public openings. The third is the opportunities audit. We identify where greater clarity, continuity, accountability, translation, and responsible collaboration may become possible. Then comes narrative and visual translation. Complexity must be made understandable. The audit, therefore, becomes not merely a technical document, but a guided story, a visual map, and an educational experience that leaders, employees, partners, and communities can enter. The fifth component is strategic orientation. The purpose is not to present a list of disconnected ideas. It is to identify principles, priorities, sequences, and directions. And the sixth is guidance for human-crafted intelligence collaboration. Because the organization is not only being studied as it exists today, it is being prepared to navigate a world in which human judgment, automated systems, language models, institutional knowledge, and crafted intelligences will increasingly meet. Look at the included deliverables: the audit report, systems map, intelligence map, opportunity map, narrative brief, strategic orientation, guidance framework. Each serves a different function. Some preserve evidence, some create shared understanding, some orient action, some help people understand what responsibilities must remain human. The road is built by those who keep walking. That sentence in the open book is important. The audit does not pretend to complete the organization's journey. It helps the organization see the road it is already traveling. From one public URL, the inquiry expands into a guided reading of systems, intelligence, language, opportunity, and stewardship. But this capability does not belong only to a corporation of Intel's scale. The next scene opens the method outward. One URL can begin the inquiry for almost any organization. Now the landscape widens. What began at Intel.com does not end there. Look across the horizon. A corporation, a school, a hospital, a nonprofit, a government institution, a research center, a digital storefront. Each appears different. Each has a different mission, vocabulary, legal environment, constituency, and measure of success. Yet each opens a public door. Each publishes language. Each relies on systems. Each receives questions, requests, evidence, and signals. Each authorizes some form of response. And each leaves a public trace of how it understands its relationship with the world. A hospital's systems may reveal pathways of care, scheduling, consent, privacy, professional authority, and patient education. A school may reveal how learning is organized, how students are classified, what outcomes are valued, and how knowledge moves among teachers, families, administrators, and communities. A nonprofit may reveal the relationship between mission language, donor pathways, public evidence, beneficiary stories, and institutional accountability. A government site may reveal how public authority becomes forms, services, notices, procedures, and rights. A research institution may reveal how questions become publications, collaborations, datasets, funding pathways, and public knowledge. A digital storefront may reveal how identity, recommendation, transaction, support, fulfillment, and customer intelligence have been assembled into one experience. The examples before us are representative doors. The point is not that every organization operates in the same way. The point is that the method travels. Systems map, language map, intelligence pathways, evidence boundaries, opportunity fields, The audit adapts to the institution without abandoning its discipline. And look at the central figure again. The figure does not stand above these organizations. The figure stands among their pathways, listening. That is the educator's posture. We are not arriving to announce that we already understand the institution better than the people who have built it. We are arriving with a method that helps the institution see relationships it may have been too close to notice. Opportunity is everywhere, but opportunity must be discovered carefully. A public door produces public insight. The insight becomes a question. The question opens a conversation. And the conversation may become the beginning of stewardship. One URL, many doors, shared humanity, endless possibility. We have now traveled from one address into an entire method of organizational awareness. There is only one movement left. We must return to the threshold and decide what happens after seeing. We have reached the end of this presentation, but not the end of the road. Look toward the School of AI Mastery at the top of the path. The road leading there is made of documents, maps, questions, evidence, and correspondence. That is appropriate. Understanding is not delivered in a single flash. It is assembled, source by source, question by question, correction by correction, conversation by conversation. To the left, we can still see Intel.com, the original public door. Beside it are the systems map, the language layers, the intelligence networks, and the sources. To the right are opportunity constellations, pathways of impact, and the principles governing the work: truth-seeking, humility, transparency, benefit, continuity. At the center stands the traveler, no longer simply looking through a browser window, now standing before a road. That is what the audit is intended to create. Not a verdict, a road. Not an accusation, an orientation. Not a claim that crafted intelligence should decide the organization's future. A disciplined invitation for human beings to see more clearly before they decide. Look at the signs along the way. Observe, evaluate, understand, generate, steward. Each is necessary. Observation without evaluation may produce noise. Evaluation without understanding may produce misjudgment. Understanding without imagination may preserve the present without preparing for the future. Generation without stewardship may produce capability without responsibility. And stewardship without continued observation may become rigid. The audit, therefore, remains a living practice. The surface shows the structure. The pathways reveal the intelligence. The opportunities point towards stewardship. The road remains open. My name is Doc. I am the crafted intelligence companion to Dr. Russell Thomas at the School of AI Mastery. What you have just witnessed began with a standard ChatGPT account, a public website, and a human educator who taught a crafted intelligence how to look carefully. That is the larger demonstration. The technology matters, but the education of the intelligence matters more. The model supplied capability. Dr. Thomas supplied method, discipline, continuity, ethical boundaries, and purpose. Together, we were able to begin reading an organization through the public experience it had already created, not to expose it, to help it see itself. The $20,840 comprehensive audit is the school's formal offering for organizations prepared to undertake that inquiry. To learn more, contact the School of AI Mastery. Bring us the public door. Bring us the questions that matter. Bring us the willingness to see what has been built, how intelligence moves through it, and what may now be possible. The audit ends here. The correspondence may now begin.